Yes. Okay, so welcome everyone. Today we'll be doing a live, remote lightning decision jam. What can go wrong? First, I'll start off with a short introduction about a lightning decision jam on its own. When it comes down to creative problem solving and making clear decisions, those are the things that separates good designers and managers from the best. And the problem with anything that requires creative and critical thinking is that it's incredibly easy to get lost and lose focus. And I'm sure you guys recognize it as well, is that you're able to fall into a trap of having useless, open-ended, unstructured discussions that always lead to projects that stall or the teams lose momentum. And simply everything goes over budget. Because of that, teams are getting fatigued and projects sometimes never end or simply lose quality. So what I want to do today is I have a few volunteers for which I'm very thankful that they're willing to help me out on this one. I send them a link in the chat to Miro. And in Miro, I would like to ask everyone to start in the top left to get a really short introduction about Miro. So this is a very short explanation of how to navigate. Someone's already destroying my beautiful board. So you'll be able to figure out how to navigate through the screens, how to simply drag through. So if you hold spacebar, you can drag left or right. And there's a small playground in which we have post-its, which you can, for example, copy-paste. You can double-click, and you can write something in those post-its. So first I would like everyone to get comfortable with Miro and discover what it is you can do and how you can move around. So feel free to break this thing apart or copy paste it and make sure that you're able to work with post-its. I've also kindly asked my volunteers not to draw any male genitals, and I hope we would be able to keep up that throughout the workshop. As a small exercise, on step 2 of the onboarding, I would like you all to copy-paste a post-it and to fill in your name, your first job, and what was the most important lesson that you learned on your first job. So we are with 4 people or 5 total, but I won't participate. I might as well. So there's no Tim anymore. I'll say Philip. I'm a design sprint facilitator. My first job was working in a bar, and what I've learned is that I can be quite grumpy in the morning. So this is some sort of a nice icebreaker in which people start to get comfortable creating post-its, being able to move them around, being able to fill them in. Because not everyone is used to working with a tool as Miro or such as Miro. And it's a nice way to get to know your team. And luckily for me, I already know these people. And it's always quite interesting to learn more about their first job. So I see Harman and Gertjan, for example, both were paper boys. Well, this is actually one of the most important functionalities. So this is the way to create and manage your post-its. The last step is a voting idea. And there are multiple ways in Miro to do voting, but I really prefer this visual way. So in the top left, there is a red dot you can select. And if you are on a PC, you can do Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, and on Apple it's Command-C, Command-V. And you can create your own voting dot. And then I would like to ask you to post it somewhere below your favorite meme. There is a free spare voting dot downstairs. Yeah, that's great. All right, well, thank you. So this is how we deal with voting. So this is the first part of getting familiar with Miro. So I think now we're ready to start. We'll go to our sailboat. And you can find it, exactly, I see already everyone has found it. And I'll explain the first step. I would like to remind my participants that there is the information available in the chat. So the first step is I want to encourage everyone to think positive. So imagine that you're now sitting with your team and you're talking about the things that are going well within your company. And it could be anywhere related towards your team, the culture, the brand, or sales. And I would like to ask you to, everyone who's partaking, to copy paste a green a green post-it in their working space. And simply write something on that sticky note that you feel is something positive that's going well. And this is done silently without discussion. And there will be 5 minutes for this exercise. In the chat, everyone has received a few suggestions for positive inputs, which they are currently typing within their own post-its. So we'll give everyone a few minutes to see how they're doing. So I think everyone is able to create their first view. And in this process, you want someone who makes sure the team stays within the limited time. So we set something like 5 minutes, and there's this really handy tool. It's called a time timer, or a cooking clock, or an alarm, something that counts down the time to make sure that everyone stays on track, to keep the pace up, because the speed within a process like this is very important. You don't want people to overthink it, you just want to create a bunch of different ideas. And in this case, we're focusing on positive experience, so people, just to make sure that people actually have a positive mindset, to think about all the things that are really well. And this also inspires the people to, in the next step, come up with things that are not going so well, or perhaps challenges within the company. So I think we all have 4 or 5 cards. So let's start with Yvonne. To drag them to the sailboat on the top side of the water. And normally I would ask everyone to read them out loud, but due to the time and we're trying to keep it as short as possible, yeah, I think it's wise to make them a bit bigger. So just scale them. It doesn't. So I'll also drag a few up. So normally, one by one, people would move their post-its to the positive side, and they would read them out loud. So really to make their other team members feel like, oh yeah, that's right as well, I totally forgot about this, and that's such a good idea. So just paste them somewhere. They don't have to be neatly organized. So imagine that the whole team starts off with this and reads them out loud. So there's a nice, good, positive vibe. And this is the first part of the exercise. It's really simple. Make sure everybody's happy, positive thinking. And the next step, of course, are the negative side. So what is holding us back? So the second step would closely resemble this one, of course. And once again, you can find your suggestions in the chat. So I would ask everyone to copy paste their orange post-it notes, or make them a bit bigger, that's fine. And write down the things that are currently challenging within your company. So what are the activities that you struggle with? And perhaps that's something like sales are lacking, or maybe the growth of the social media isn't going as well as we hoped for, or maybe there's a process. So there are a lot of different things that people within your company would recognize as, hey, this is something that is a challenge to us. This is something that's not going as well as we hoped, or things that bug me. So what is perhaps even annoying to you personally? And this is a great way to get a lot of perspective from different people in your organization, to really find out where your company might be bleeding a bit. Where are you losing a lot of time or money? And what would be the things that might be worth solving? So once again, the team is very busy with writing different ideas. And a step like this would also be something like give or take 5 minutes. Normally, with the positive things, people would go one by one, post them on the board, but also read them out loud. And with the challenges, you don't really want to do that because you don't want to make people a target or have people influenced by, oh, this was your idea, I know it, and you're always complaining about this. That's not relevant. So I would like to ask everyone, and I'll help Chris with his post-its, so he can drag the ones from Nas, who sadly couldn't be here today, and we'll just drag them somewhere underneath the waterline. So now we have a nice combination of ideas, positive and negative. So after 5 minutes, you also completed this step. And the next step is about prioritizing problems. So as you noticed, in the bottom of the screen, everyone has their own little workspace. And within that workspace, you also have voting dots. So we recognize this from the first example. And in the first step, I would like to ask everyone to use 3 voting dots and to vote on the idea that you believe would be the most critical ones to solve. And you're allowed to place multiple dots on the same post-it. So if you really feel that this is the number one thing, I would kindly ask you to make that clear in your voting dots. If everyone could place their voting dots on different post-its, so that would be 3 per person. And this is also something that you do silently without any discussion. So that's something that's really nice. We don't have any discussions about these things. If we feel that these are the most, these are the problems that are worth talking about, that's fine. We're not going to talk about it, but we want to vote on those issues. So once again, this only takes up a few minutes. So this would be something like 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, so that's fine. What I'll do next, or actually the moderator will pick out the issues with the most votes. And let's see, that would be, of course, this one, which is not a surprise. And we'll move it to our next board. So we'll get rid of this. And, well, there might be 2 others as well. But we actually already identified that this is the most valuable problem. So the ideas that were worth mentioning were these, the ones with only 1 vote we tend to ignore because it's not even really worth it. So I'll move these. Normally I would copy paste them, but fine. Let's just put it here, bring forward, there. So now we have our, top 2 or 3 problems, and we quite clearly already know that this is the one that we want to focus on. To make sure, if you're working with multiple challenges that you would like to handle in your Lightning Decision Jam, that is of course possible. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is reframe the problem as a standardized challenge, because these are issues or problems that we run into or things that we find annoying, but we want to make sure that we formulate them in the same way. And a really easy way to do that is to start with how might we? And how might we, you can abbreviate that to HMW. And the idea behind it is that you can say, for example, if there is I'll scale this up a bit. If the problem is something called process Y is very complex and inefficient, you want to rephrase that to how might we simplify process Y to make it less complex and more efficient. And if you have multiple problems, they are all formulated in different ways. And by transitioning them to a standardized challenge, you get a more generic view of those challenges and how you would approach them. The next step is we want to come up with multiple solutions. So what I'll actually do is, for the sake of this presentation, no need to, people will do it within their own workspace. So we have a card here, and it says, how might we simplify process Y to make it less complex and more efficient? So the next step would be to ideate a mass of solutions. So once again, in the chat, everyone has 2 or 3 solutions that they can come up with. So normally you would give everyone 5 minutes, and they would copy paste those green post-its that they have in their workspace, and we would challenge them to come up with a solution to the challenge, how might we simplify process Y to make it less complex and more efficient. So I would ask everyone now to once again copy paste a bunch of green cards in their workspace and to write down their ideas for a solution. So once again, the whole team will continue to create new post-its. And normally, as a good facilitator or someone who who operates this, you would also show a bit of interest in the people who are helping you out, saying, is everybody okay? Does anybody need a break? Does everyone still have coffee? But in this case, they were instructed to remain silent, but we have a way of communicating. So if there are any questions, I'll hear of it. But so far it looks as if everyone is able to create their own solution. And if they all have written it down, I would like to ask them once again to move their cards beneath the solution, the challenge. Thank you. And once again, this challenge is also only 5 minutes, so it's really time driven, so it doesn't, the speed and the quantity in this case is more important than the quality. So quite often people are overthinking it, overcomplicating it, and even perhaps scared to share their ideas, and this is just a way to really force out those multiple ideas. Once again, everyone has 3 dots remaining to vote. And once again, I would like to ask them to silently and without any discussion, is to, within 4 minutes, to vote on the idea that they think would be the best idea to solve this challenge. So everyone has 3 voting dots, and they can review the cards and find out what would be the best way to possibly solve this challenge. And let's see what we have here. There are a bunch of ideas, and we're looking for a bunch of votes. Oh, this is if you want to list vote, you can make out. Awesome, awesome. Well, now it's a lot easier for our participants because we're heading towards the last 2 steps, and this it's actually step 7. We want to decide what to execute on. So we have a bunch of different solutions to the challenge, and we want to map them. So what I'm actually going to do, and I know we have people present in the chat, we're going to use this very handy impact versus effort overview. So let's say we pick the ideas with the most dots on them. Those would be probably these. Oh, we'll group them. And I would say, okay, I have the card, remove any unnecessary steps from the process. And I would ask the team, I start in the center, and I would say, will this have more effort or less effort to complete? And we get some input, and we would say, well, removing steps doesn't take that much effort, but it wouldn't really make a huge impact for some reason. We would say, fine. We would have a possible solution. Let's see if I can still select this. And it would be this one, and that one would start in the center. Would it be more or less impact? This would have quite some impact and it's also not that much of an effort. But perhaps we want to create an app which will be a lot of effort, but it would have a big impact. So this was actually the idea that I thought would be something. So I'm going to cheat here, and this is of course something that you normally don't do. But let's say this would be the idea that we want to continue on. So let's say this would have the most impact, and it would be average effort. So maybe not even that much. So this is a nice overview to really indicate, well, if something requires a lot of effort, it might not be the best thing to do. If it is costing a lot of effort and almost has no impact, then you never want to do it because it's a waste of time. But if it takes a lot of effort, but it would have a huge impact, then it might be something that you want to pick up in the future. And of course, if something doesn't have a lot of impact, it might not really be a solution. So you're really looking for the solutions here in the top left. So this is a great way to, from your different solutions, to find out, well, this would be perhaps our best idea that we want to use. We're actually not going into too much details on the last step, but of course it is quite an important one. All you need to know is that now you have your solution, you want to make sure you have actionable steps. So actually to start finding out how to implement this solution, which would be the steps required to take. And in our webinar, we'll explain to you how a design sprint would be worth validating this idea. Because there's now a solution to the idea that as a team we decided was the most valuable one, and this is the way to, as a team, we believe would be the best solution to approach this. So when you're at this point, it's really clear to figure out, okay, this is the most valuable thing to work on. How do we proceed from here? So this was all that I have on the Lightning Decision Jam for today. And of course, I would like to thank all my participants. For the people in the webinar, we'll have enough room for questions in the chat. So if you have any questions about this as well, feel free to let us know. And as a very warm welcome and thank you gift for everyone who is joining the webinar, we're actually facilitating a free remote Lightning Decision Jam. So if you and your company are at a point where you're thinking about or even considering really improving your business by identifying your most valuable challenge and coming up with different solutions, we'll help you to figure that out. Thank you so much.